Hey guys, this is Ryan Morrissey with Peak Custom Fitness Solutions, and today I'm going to talk to you about our part 2 of our Spring Sport Athlete series discussing recovery. So part 2 is all about nutrition. So as you know, if you want your body to operate at a high level, we need to put the right kind of gas in the tank. We get really focused on how hard we work the engine, how hard we push ourselves, and what we do in training, but rarely do we focus on what kind of fuel do we put in for the right time or to get the right adaptation that we're looking for. So today's our deep dive in to a couple of really popular questions and topics about sports performance and sports recovery in regards to nutrition. All right, so one big question we get all the time is what should I use to enhance my performance for a pre-workout drink, supplement, or food item? So I always turn to what's going on the rest of the day. So if we're focused on exactly what we're doing prior to our workout, but we don't really pay any attention to what we're doing throughout the day, you're under-fueled or improperly fueled throughout the day. Your tank is going to be depleted by the time you do your pre-workout meal or supplement, and you're trying to catch up for mistakes that you made for the rest of the day. So the goal is to dial in your overall nutrition strategy, and then you don't need to rely on something just before your workout, your practice, or your training session that's going to, give you a fix from your errors that you had earlier. So for example, things that are critical to health and performance if we want to, operate our bodies at a high level and make sure we recover after we, drive the race car hard. Key factors here are that we want a nice macronutrient balance. So macronutrients are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And they all have an integral role in performance and recovery and optimal health. And if we're too dominant in any one of those areas, we can compromise our performance and recovery. So we want to make sure that from the protein perspective, we meet our adequate protein needs so we can, again, recover, we can build lean muscle, and we can get our body, back to life for the next day of practice. So in doing so, we're looking for high quality sources. So things that are not full of hormones or meats that are not highly processed, right? So for example, let's take an organic chicken breast and let's compare that to a McDonald's chicken nugget. So you have, just guessing, but I know there's some data out there that shows that chicken nugget has 17 ingredients, give or take. That's a problem when we're talking about eating chicken. It should have one ingredient, and that's chicken. And then we can put some healthy toppings on it, but we want to start with something that's actually evident in nature. So chicken breast is going to be your optimal source there compared to the processed meat. All right, same thing goes for, let's say, grass-fed beef versus a Slim Jim, right, or a hot dog. So anytime we can get the least amount of altered food source, that's what we're looking for. So we call that a tier 1 protein source. For carbohydrates, we want a combination of non-starchy and starchy carbohydrates, and they each play a different role. So think of your non-starchy as vegetables. So broccoli, a cauliflower, carrot, mixed green leafy veggies. Those are the things that make up the bulk of our micronutrient sources. So think vitamins and minerals. So they're packed with them. They don't have a lot of calories or energy from a caloric standpoint, but they have the micronutrients that are needed for all the processes in our body. So we want to make sure we get our adequate servings of those per day. Now we also need the macronutrient carbohydrate from a caloric perspective. So think of carbohydrate for performance with rice, with potatoes, butternut squash, a brown rice pasta, a quinoa, things like that. So we also need to meet our needs, and depending on the sport that you're involved in, some sports require more, some require less, but that's a part of it too. So we need to make sure we have our servings of those in per day. And then the third part is healthy fats. Fat isn't a bad word. We have a lot of processes in our body for health and performance that utilize fat as the source of those things. And in order to do so, we need to make sure we find the fats that are actually good for us and that don't cause inflammation in our body. So for example, healthy oils, coconut oil, olive oil versus a canola oil and our vegetable oils that become inflammatory in our body. The olive oil and coconut oil are going to be a much better resource. Healthy mixed nuts, almonds, cashews, macadamia nuts, those are all healthy fat sources. Avocado, you could put it on a salad as a topping or as a side, or even in a smoothie. Those are healthy fat sources that are going to help us perform at a high level. And they also don't impact our blood sugar, so we don't see a lot of spikes and drops in reaction with fatigue from those. So we need to make sure we hit our three main, or three only macronutrient sources, and we need to be relatively even in those, okay? So that's where we start. A pre-workout supplement meal is only going to make a difference if we've done the right thing through the rest of the day. And it shouldn't alter too much from your normal eating strategy. So really it's a topic that opens up a can of worms that, as I just mentioned, is a bigger conversation about strategy throughout the day than it is with a quick fix. Now, if we're talking about something like a stimulant like caffeine, whether it's a cup of coffee or an energy drink, obviously caffeine is going to get us hyped up and amped up temporarily. But think of that as almost like an artificial source of energy. If you're meeting your nutrition needs and you're meeting your hydration needs and your sleep needs overnight, you should have energy to get up for your game, your practice, or your workout. Okay, our number 2 topic here is, should we be concerned with weight change during the season? So the answer is it depends. So weight might fluctuate a little bit if you're increasing your overall volume of workload and you're not used to that. So you jump right into season and into tryouts and you're running now 6 days a week instead of running maybe 2 or 3 days a week. Well, we're going to see probably a short-term weight loss, but we should be able to adjust to that and increase our caloric intake in order to meet the need. So in season, when we're trying to, produce a lot of output during, again, our games, our practices, our training sessions, and we want max effort from our body, it's not a time to put another stressor on our body. So exercise in itself is a stress. It's a physical stress, it's a psychological stress. We also don't want to add restriction in calories or restriction in any macronutrient. So if we're looking to lose weight, looking to lose fat mass, we should rarely ever want to lose muscle mass. Our fat mass loss should take place prior to season. If we're putting that extra stressor on our body, it's going to decrease our recovery from day to day. So in season is not the time for a significant weight change. If we see a pound fluctuation from day to day, that could be due to hydration, electrolyte imbalance. So what you want to do is look at your trends from week to week. And if you're staying within a pound or two throughout the season, you're doing a great job of just maintaining where you should be. So when we talk about recovery foods, we want to make sure we prioritize a healthy, balanced meal that has carbohydrate, has protein, and can also have some fat in it post-workout, post-practice, or post-game. When practices or games are later in the day or late at night, and we need to get to bed, we need to get some sleep to recover for the next day, our timing's critical. So if we have a late practice and you're within, let's say, 3 to 4 hours of the time that you want to ideally go to bed to recover, we want to try to follow up that practice or game with a meal almost immediately after. And it's important for, what we call an anabolic window, but it's also probably more important so that we don't go to bed while we're still digesting. So when our body's sleeping, that's when we're getting our optimal recovery. We're building back, we're replenishing. And at night, we're in an anabolic state. During the day, we're in a catabolic state, or we're breaking down. So if we want to be in this anabolic state and take advantage of that and get all of the organs in our body to recover, we can't have them work. So if we require our body to break down, digest, and then absorb nutrients and disperse them in our body in storage, we don't want to do that while we're sleeping. We want to get that over with prior to going to bed. So the golden rule is 3 hours. We're looking for 3 hours of time between the last thing you eat and when you go to sleep. So again, if your practice or game ends at 8 p.m. and you want to go to bed at 10, you better get that snack in or that meal in on the way home or as soon as you walk in the door to at least give yourself an hour and a half, 2 hours to digest. All right, ideally, again, it's 3. So think of your brain needing recovery as well. All right, we use it obviously all day long. Student athletes are at school all day, then we're going right to practice, right to homework. Our brain is going to be the last thing that actually shuts off during our sleep. So if our GI tract is digesting food and dealing with it with absorption, and that takes 2 to 3 hours, think of your brain as awake and not recovering during those first 2-3 hours of sleep. So if we can get all of that digestion and absorption done prior to going to bed, your brain's going to be able to relax, recover, and be ready for the next day to use it again at a higher level if we get that absorption done prior to going to bed. So we want to optimize our sleep. Therefore, we need to watch our 3-hour rule. All right. Okay, let's talk about hydration. So we think of water and fluid replacement with hydration, but hydration is also the replenishment of electrolytes. So think sodium, magnesium, potassium is your big electrolytes that we lose through sweat. So when we're exercising at a high level, or for a long duration, or if we're indoors and it's hot, or it's outdoors as the weather changes later on in spring sports, we're going to lose fluid at a faster pace than we would lose it in cold weather. So we need to change our hydration habits in order to meet that demand. So when we think of hydration, one of the big drinks that comes to mind with a lot of people is Gatorade, right? Or a sports drink like Gatorade. So the big difference between fluid and electrolytes and then what Gatorade does for us is Gatorade adds carbohydrate, right? It adds sugar. And that sugar may or may not be needed depending on what we're doing with our exercise intensity and our duration. So let's separate those two out. So for fluid replacement, we need 20 to 24 ounces per hour if our effort is high or again, the weather's really hot, we're losing fluid at a rapid rate. That could be even up to 32 ounces per hour. All right, so think of just a normal or big size water bottle, replacing that per hour. All right, now we want to make sure that we replace our electrolytes so we don't have an imbalance that can lead to cramping. So your electrolytes can be replaced with an electrolyte specific supplement. So that can be a tablet. They make electrolyte just tabs that we take. There are electrolyte like fizz tablets that we can put in, such as a brand called Noon. We use a brand called Thorne here, and Thorne has a product called Catalyte. That's a powder, and there are many others on the market. So what we want to look for when we look for those electrolyte replacements, do we have all of the electrolytes in there that are critical? Do we have magnesium? Do we have potassium? And do we have sodium? So we're looking for the combination of those 3. And then we need to look at caloric intake, right? Is that supplement full of calories or in addition sugar or not? And they can be separated or they can be combined. So Gatorade is going to be an electrolyte replacement, but it's loaded with sugar. So you're going to have, in the 20s, depending on which type of it, in the 20s of grams of sugar or carbohydrate per serving. So we need carbohydrate to replace energy stores when our glycogen levels get depleted. Now, depending on the person, we have anywhere between, it can be 1,500 to as much as, let's say, 2,500 calories stored as glycogen, and that's in the liver, and that's in the muscle, and then we have glucose that's floating in our bloodstream. All right, very little bit. So as we're processing that glycogen for energy to practice or to play a game, that's a lot of calories that are available for you to go through before you quote unquote bonk, right, or hit the wall. Now, if we're playing at a very high level, you don't have a substitute, and you're on the bulk of that hour and a half to 2 hours, then yeah, carbohydrate replenishment can be important. And I would suggest about 20 grams at that 1 hour to 1.5 hour mark if you're going to continue. Now, if you're playing a position or a sport where you have intermittent breaks, you're getting substitutes, and maybe the game lasts an hour and a half, but you're really only playing 40 minutes or 45, if you fueled properly throughout the day, you do not need a caloric replacement throughout that game. So your hydration source should be water and electrolytes. All right, if it is hot again, bump your electrolytes up and bump your fluid intake up. If we are playing a sport where, again, we're not getting a substitute, we're grinding at a high level, and you're not really getting a break, then you can supplement with a Gatorade type drink or another sports drink. You can supplement with real food if you can digest. If you have a halftime that gives you 15 minutes to digest, you could use a gel pack. They make those that are less processed now, and you can actually get them from real whole food sources. You could have a piece of fruit, and that would be just as effective as a Gatorade, plus you don't get the sugary processed byproducts from it. So that would be my suggestion. All right, so understand the difference. Know that the carbohydrate isn't needed, and you definitely don't want to force that when you don't need it. All right, you want your body to operate on the fuel that you already have stored from eating in a healthy manner throughout the day. Thanks so much for joining us again on our second part of our Spring Sport Athlete series. So the third piece we'll follow up with is going to be all about exercises that you can do to decrease your risk of injury during season and to maximize your performance. So if you're in a sport-specific weight training regimen and you have exercises that are specific to you and your development in your off-season, your preseason, and now during season, you want to continue to follow that. If you do not have anything that you've been doing or been provided in a professional setting, adding these simple exercises in will help you maintain what you've built in the off-season and help you optimize your strength, speed, and performance as you get closer to playoffs. We also want to make sure that our body's operating on all cylinders here, and we have the same body awareness as we did when we were training prior to season. So as we're changing direction, we're landing and absorbing force, our body's processing that from the brain to the central nervous system. And if we lose those exercises that did that for us, we're actually going to increase our risk of injury as the season goes on. So stay tuned for the third part of our series. We'll follow up with that. Give us a like and follow us on any of our social media platforms. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe for more videos like this with more content that can help make you better. Appreciate you following along. Have a good day.